people trust what you've done, right? So, I mean, it's easy for me to write, like, I write it all the time, and it's the backdoor brag. It's like CFO, Ironman, ultramarathoner, multi-millionaire. I own $10 million of real estate. Like, and you just keep going down the list, and it's like, okay, like, I'm not a certified coach, but guess what? I've done a lot of shit that no other humans have. Like, it's that simple.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Founders Ascent. BJ here with Gavin again, and we are joined by a very special guest, Clint Murphy. For those of you who are not familiar, I need you to go into the description and click into his bio, read about it, and then immediately develop an inferiority complex, because this guy is just phenomenal. He has worked in accounting for the last 25 years as a CFO, and this week is his last week as an employee, going full-time on his personal projects and doing all his great stuff. He has a podcast, he has a newsletter, he has a massive following on Twitter and LinkedIn and all the platforms, and just doing amazing stuff, helping simplify psychology for people and lead a just better life for everyone. And we're extremely honored to have you on. Thank you so much, Clint, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to talk to you and your audience today.
Yeah, and I kind of just want to jump in and just go straight, sort of maybe let everyone else sort of know how you started and just a little bit more background from just your perspective.
Yeah, if you're talking about, even if we go back 25 years ago, I mean, I met my wife in high school, so we've been together since 1995. Which for some of your audience is pretty scary, longer than a lot of people have been alive. And we both graduated high school and then looked at what we were going to do for college. I actually started as a psych English major, thought eventually that's what I would do. And the interesting part is, we'll talk about entrepreneurship, we'll talk about your passion and what you love, and you'll notice that what I'm doing now 25 years later is more psychology English related, with the writing about psychology, things of that nature. So I've gravitated back to where I knew I wanted to be. But some point on that journey, she said, hey, you should do something that'll get you a job. And not to pick on the psych and English majors out there, but there's not a lot of jobs. So I ended up going back to, or shifting my degree to accounting, and landed a role at KPMG. And the big four accounting firms, they're different in size and stature depending on where you are in the world, what city you're in, what province or state you're in. And it just so happened that KPMG in our city had about 40% of the market share. So out of the big four here, it was the dominant player. And so that played a pretty fortuitous role, I'd say, in the rest of my life. My wife also ended up there. My two best friends are there. One of them, his wife was also there. Like, it's a pretty small shop, and you become pretty tight. And Gavin, I know you talked about interning at E&Y.
Yeah.
You work so many hours, and you work so hard.
So I've heard, yeah.
And so few people understand what you're doing, that your relationships tend to form with the people that are in your pod, the people that are in your year group or your internship group. If I look at the two guys who I said are two of my closest friends today, one of them was a summer student with me, right? So we did our internship like you're doing. We did our summer, and we just became friends. And then when we started full time, the third guy joined, and there was something about the way we identified with each other. We saw in each other people who wanted more, wanted to pursue greatness, and became fast friends. And the interesting part, I sometimes look at it and I look at my two buddies and I feel like I'm the underperformer of the three of us. And it's just incredible that I was able to find those two friendships and find the people who, for example, Gavin, one of them is, each firm breaks their practices into a certain number of areas. And one of the practices at KPMG is consumer markets, retail, malls, restaurants. And one of my friends is running that practice for Canada, for the entire country. Wow. And so I look at it and say, well, hey, that's pretty damn amazing. Like, that guy's kicking ass and taking names. And so finding those people, we'll talk about your circle. Like, I found those guys when I was 20. The other's the CFO or the SVP finance of the largest real estate development company in our province. Like, these guys who are kicking ass and taking names, and I'm lucky enough to have them as my friends and to push me and pull me along on my journey. So when you look back at the start, I would say it was that shift to accounting, getting hired at KPMG, and building a friendship group with guys like that. Another guy in that circle who I'm close with was the CFO for Pure Multifamily, which was a REIT that was bought by Blackstone for a big number. So you just start to surround yourself with these people, and you can't help but do good things.
Yeah. I kind of want to ask you about kind of your accounting position and how that really helped kind of get you towards that CFO position in Mosaic Homes. And so
let's do it.
What are some skills that you learned through accounting that you think really benefited you in that CFO position? And then maybe after that, kind of talk about how that, transferred into you becoming a podcaster and sort of an influencer on LinkedIn, Twitter, among other platforms.
Yeah, it all ties together. And so the number one thing is you can't only be an accountant. Because if you're only an accountant, you're an accountant. And so your ability to grow and to evolve and to take on more and more senior responsibility is limited. You see these people post a post on LinkedIn or Twitter, and they're like, hey, I want to be a CFO. What are the few things I have to learn how to be finance and accounting? And it's like, well, whoa, like, take a step back. Are you crazy? Like, do you actually know what goes into this role? Like, if you're in a small, medium-sized shop, you're involved in IT, you're involved in tax, you're involved in finance, you're involved in accounting, you're involved in human resources, legal, like anything that touches the shop that has anything to do with numbers or anything that doesn't have to do with the general operations of that business generally touch you. And you need to know how the business runs. So you're basically, other than the president of the company, you know more about everything than anyone else in that shop. And so what you have to do is you have to develop an ability to learn. That's the number one thing. My greatest strength is learning. And so it's no wonder that the original name of my podcast was The Pursuit of Learning. And the second name became The Growth Guide. It's all about growth. It's all about learning. So you take a step back and you go back in time and you say, okay, well, how did KPMG help? When you're at an accounting firm, you're doing audits. And if you're in an enterprise group where you're working with small, privately owned businesses, not even necessarily small, just privately owned, your engagements may only be 2 weeks to a month. So you have 2 weeks to a month to go into a business, learn it from the ground up, understand if the numbers that they're reporting are reasonable, audit them, have conversations with the key people on the finance team, maybe have conversations with key executives, and then you're out and you're on to a new job and you're doing it again, and again, and again, and again. And so you're just always learning. You're learning business from the ground up. I've always looked in Canada, I think in the US, I don't hear as many of you say this, I've always looked at my 4 years before I left and then eventually came back. I always look at those early years at KPMG as a paid MBA. Like, I'm being paid to go learn how to run businesses, to meet amazing people. Like, this is an MBA and I'm getting paid to do it. And so that early experience helped me climb the ladder. And then I left KPMG, went into I actually did a break. I did 2 years for a company called Solder. They became Molding and Millwork. They're one of the largest manufacturers and distributors of moldings in North America. I did a 2-year operational role with them where I ran an MDF manufacturing plant in a small city in Ontario. And so we manufactured like window trim, baseboards, door jambs, that type of thing. And I did that for 2 years, and it was all about like upgrading equipment, upgrading processes, hiring people, training programs, standardization. So there was no accounting and finance. It was pretty amazing. And then went back to KPMG and did 3 years as a senior manager. So at that level, I really learned how to run engagements, run people, build teams, be a leader, and then took that and went into real estate. In real estate, Gavin, I started as a controller. So I was a controller. A year later, I was a director of finance. And then they told me there was a ceiling on my potential. And so there's going to be a theme here. They said, so you got a choice. You can just keep doing what you're doing, or you can make a decision to leave and grow somewhere else. And without any hesitation, I chose to leave. We agreed on a 6-month time frame for me to be able to find the right job and help them transition. And I ended up signing up with another shop. But the day before I started there, I started having conversations with the Mosaic team. Probably talked to them for 3 to 6 months, like 14 interviews. I had an interview with my wife and kids where we were at one of the shareholders' houses for dinner, and with another shareholder and their kids and their partners. And it's like, holy shit, we're auditioning me, my wife, my 5-year-old, and my 2-year-old. How is this going to go? And I joined them as the VP of finance with the idea that I would take over as the CFO. Had a 2 to 3 year training program, and then I took over. But one of the key things that really differentiated me then, and I think differentiates me now, and you see it in the writing, the speaking, the podcasting, like the way I'm talking to you guys, I'm generally a reasonable public speaker. I think I'm probably above reasonable now, but I like, it's the Canadian in me. You don't like to say it, and part of that is what you want to develop, guys, and you should both start developing it early, and you are, because you're on this podcast. It's this idea of rare skills. So yes, I'm an accountant, but I also worked on public speaking. I also worked on my writing skills. I worked on all forms of communication. So now I can stand up in front of a room and I can speak about numbers, but I can also speak about our business, and I can talk to the bankers. I can go out and have a conversation with our insurance agents. I can go talk to our accounting firms, and I can have conversations that move the business forward. And that's what starts to differentiate you and move you from the director of accounting to, wait a second, this guy can run this whole group. This person can be our CFO. And in a lot of shops, eventually, this person can transition from the CFO to a president role because they've developed all the skill sets that make them well-rounded. So I think the more you want to climb the ladder, the more you want to pick up these diverse skills that become rare skills. And generally, you're both starting where I like people to start. You're starting in fields that are quantitative in nature. And fields that are quantitative in nature tend to not have people who want to learn how to public speak, who want to host a podcast, who want to learn how to write and put their words in front of other people. And so if you can pick up these skills and you can lay them over top of your quantitative skills, you're going to differentiate yourself from the average person. And that's going to allow you to make more money.
Yeah. It almost sounds like what Naval Ravikant says, if you've heard of him. He talks about specific knowledge and how you can only acquire it through on-the-job experience. It's not something you can read a textbook to figure out. It's something that you need to do on the job, maybe with a mentor. And that's pretty much exactly what you were talking about, just acquiring those skills over the course of your life. What are you going to do on top of being an accountant? Like you were saying, public speaking. That's a big one. And you're acquiring all these skills as you move from position to position. And I think another thing as well is becoming really good at something isn't the end, right? It's shifting to another position, starting from scratch, and then moving to the top at that thing again. And that Joe Rogan was talking about that on his podcast. He's like, I'm really good at this, but I also like starting from scratch with bow hunting and stuff, right? Because in bow hunting, he started with no prior experience, right? And moving to the top in that. And I think that's really cool, and that's kind of what it sounded like from your experience, kind of just shifting from position to position in order to acquire that specific knowledge to become better in areas where you weren't before.
Yeah, in the two, there's slight differences between the two because I do the second one as well. And the reason I do the second one, and the reason I think he does the second one, is, and I especially like to prescribe for younger people doing it with physicality. And there's a concept I've come up with over time that I call my get shit done muscle. And I set very big, audacious goals, but I can only do that because I've done smaller goals. And I've taught myself that I'm someone who can do things. Yeah. And that didn't start till I was probably in my early 30s, where I really started to ramp it up. Stephen Covey's Begin with the End in Mind. Where do I want to be? What does it take to get there? How do I break that down into annual goals, quarterly goals, weekly goals, daily goals, habits? And the first thing I did was, Joe talks about bow hunting. I decided it would be Ironman. I was probably 195 pounds out of shape couch potato when I started that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, hey, I'm going to go out and run a 10K tomorrow to start training. It was, I bought new running shoes, brought my bike in for a tune-up, and signed up for lessons to overcome my fear of the water. Started with the bare bone basic, boys, and grew from there to completing that Ironman over 2 years, losing 30 plus pounds, getting in shape. 5 years later, bit out of shape again because I'm growing my career, focusing on that. Seasons of life, right? Focusing on the career again, not the physicality. Decided to pick up running. Again, haven't run in years. Start with running around the block. 1.5 years later, I ran every single day for 1.5 years, at least a little over 1 mile, 1.5 miles, let's say, and finished with a 50 miler on a 50 miler trail run, right? So like that ability to go from zero in something, like I'm not a runner, to an ultra runner who's completing a 50 miler, it teaches me I'm someone who can fucking do things. Like, you set a goal, I know I'll do it, right? Like, there's nothing I don't think I can do. I always joke, like, okay, I'm probably not going to be a NASA astronaut and go to the moon, but now I can pay for that. Done. I can just give Jeff some money or Elon some money and go fly to the moon. So there's very few things in life I don't think I can do, and that's because, like Joe, I go out of my way to pick up something that isn't my skill set and say I'm going to go from zero to pretty damn good at this.
Yeah.
And I like to look at Joe, and people, you go look at his Instagram, and when he was, I think, 14 years old, he drew a photo, sketched a photo of, I think it's Tommy Hearns, a boxer, and he shared it when that boxer died a year or two ago. And the quality of his sketch is phenomenal. So Joe, like that dude is a Renaissance man. And he does that in so many different areas. Back to you, boys.
So I'm curious, you spent 25 years in accounting, and then you just recently, it looks like 2-3 years ago, started with this sort of content journey. Why did you start creating content?
Yeah, so this is all part of Stephen Covey again, okay? So we go back to January 2018. And over the course of 2 or 3 years, having conversations with my boss as I transition into the CFO role, in one of those conversations, because we aren't an individually owned shop, the shop I'm in, we have arm's length multiple shareholders, and the question becomes, can I become a shareholder? And I get told no. And along that journey, I'm thinking, what if the answer is yes? Okay, this is what it means for my life. What if the answer is no? What am I going to do? And I came up with, hey, I'm not going to work for someone for the rest of my life. I can't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retire early. I thought 49. And, before I'm 50. And I'm going to write, podcast, public speak, coach and consult, and invest in private equity and real estate. I had my list. So he says no. So I say, okay, I'll give you 10 years. I was, I think, 39 at the time. I'll give you 10 years. That would take us to like December 2027, right? And I put it away for a while. And then January 2020, I go to a silent retreat. And it's all I can think about on the silent retreat. And so I come away from that silent retreat and I create a roadmap for what I call Mission 2028. But every time, like when I go look at that document for Mission 2028, I wrote Mission 2025 and I saved it as Mission 2025. So even though it was Mission 2028, like in my head, I knew it was going to go faster. And in it, I created a roadmap of what are my values? What's my purpose? Why am I here? What's my BHAG? What are my 1-year goals? What are my quarterly goals? And I wrote my values tied to my strengths. My number one value is learning and growth. I almost never look at it regularly, right? I pull it out once a year and update it, but I always chuckle to myself that the first 2 names of my podcast were my first value. And I didn't even think about it when I created those names. It's just, it becomes internalized, right? Yeah. So that's why you do these things, because you put it on paper, you internalize it, and then you just go do it. And you look back at these things that you created that you didn't look at for 10 years, and you realized, holy shit, I hit everything I put on that page. Yeah. And so on page 2, I created a roadmap of every single one of those categories that I mentioned. Right, podcast, public speak, coach and consult, invest in private equity and real estate. And I said, okay, what does great look like? Like if I'm going to coach, I want to be the number 1 coach in Canada, executive coach in Canada. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? What do I need to do? And I listed the things I need to do. I listed any education requirements I needed to meet. And then I said, I noticed, we're in COVID now. And I noticed every single one of those categories had build your brand. Every single category, build your brand. Yeah. Like if you want to be good at this, have a brand. Have people know who you are. You're going to get access to deals. You're going to get access to conversations. You're going to get access to people. I was like, okay. And then COVID hit, right? Oh shit, lockdown. We're in one of those, let's call it states where just you're in these engagement pods, school's canceled, you're not allowed to leave your house, work, you don't go to work, you work from home, your kids' sports are canceled. So all of a sudden I go from this guy who's just flying like 1,000,000 miles a minute. I'm at my job all day. I'm with my kids, I'm at their sports, I'm training, to like locked down in my house doing nothing. And like all the conversations up to that date were like, there was a little bit of gaslighting, like it wasn't an absolute no on being a shareholder. It was not right now, maybe in the future. And in April, we did a reorg. In April 2020, we did a reorg, and it was hard. Like it burnt me out. It was soul destroying. And somewhere in it, it went from maybe to no. Like it's never happening. And if I have to be honest with myself and I look back retrospectively, I may have quite quit that day. I may have said, okay, that's telling me there's a cap on my future. Yeah. Never going to make more money than I do now. I will continue to give you everything I'm giving you today. And that's going to take less and less of my time because I'm going to get better at it. But and you're already paying me a number to do that. So what feels fair to me is I will keep delivering that exact level of service, no more. Any extra knowledge, and you guys know I love learning, I'm reading books, I'm having conversations. Every extra ounce of knowledge that I get from that moment goes to the house, goes to me. Any extra work I do from that moment goes to me. It goes to the house. I'm done. You guys got what you got. You don't get more. And so that, I look back and I made that conscious decision or subconscious decision that day. Decided I'd launch the podcast and bought a couple books, how to interview people, the art of interviewing, how to ask questions. Read a couple of them, booked some guests, and started talking. And you both know, it is not easy to grow a podcast. Like it's one of the hardest things out there.
Very hard.
Because there's no virality to it. There's virality to YouTube. So if there's anything you two should do is make sure you go YouTube first and then you upload to the podcast, because YouTube could go viral. And I jumped onto social media, mainly Instagram. And all the shareholders started following me on Instagram. They were picking on me. They were making jokes. Like, I was like, this is fucking awkward. Like, this is awkward. Where aren't these guys? And they weren't on Twitter. So I went over there and I started to learn. And I quickly realized this idea. It's very important when you're young to understand flywheels. You guys talk to a lot of people about flywheels yet?
No.
Okay. So... yeah. Picture an example a lot of people like to use is picture like this. You're in Africa, you're digging wells, and you've got like the big wheel that's bringing the water up. And it's like a massive wheel, and you're like putting your full body into turning it to get that first turn. And it's so hard. And it's like you're cranking it, and you keep going, and then you get your first drop of water. And it hits the cup, and you're like, shit, yeah, we got some water in the bucket. And the more you do it, the more water that's coming. And eventually the motion is each revolution, the idea with flywheel, each revolution becomes easier and easier, and it generates results. So now this wheel's spinning faster and the water's coming faster, and all of a sudden it gets to the point where the water's just shooting into that bucket, and you got to get like the next bucket and get it going, and you're not even touching the wheel anymore. It's just flying by itself. And that's a flywheel. And you want to build that for whatever business you're going to create. So what I realized the flywheel was that if I grow on social, I can more comfortably reach out to bigger guests. I can't reach out to a New York Times bestseller. Well, I can, but they generally say F off. When I have the people that are listening to the podcast are my mom and my only 3 friends really, and only one of them listens. Like it's just, no one supports you when you're small.
Yeah.
And so you can't get people. So the bigger I grow, the more people I can ask. The more people I can ask, the better conversations I can have. The better the conversations I have, the better the YouTube shows, the better the downloads, the more I can write about it on Twitter, the more I can share the wins, the more I can share conversations where you're like, oh shit, you talked with Bill Perkins, Die With Zero? Like, oh, I want to listen to that. I want to read what you learned from him. I'm going to go to your website. I'm going to go to your podcast. I'm going to follow you on Twitter. And oh, great. Now I've grown again. So now I can reach out to someone else. Like had a great conversation with Daniel Priestley. I just saw him on Ali Abdal's YouTube video for the second time, and I saw him interviewing with Steve Bartlett. And I'm like, oh shit, like that guy was on mine. That guy was on my show. And it's like, so you get more access to people. Leads to growth on the social media, leads to growth of the podcast. And you just keep that flywheel spinning. And now that flywheel spinning, we say, well, wait a second, let's speed it up. Throw LinkedIn in there. Now we're growing on LinkedIn. And if you look at my LinkedIn content, I do nothing on LinkedIn. It's all my wife. She takes my Twitter content, brings it over, does all the work, and she's got 75,000 people who read what she does on LinkedIn. Now that's sending people to the podcast. And when we were just doing the podcast, we were growing 20% a month, every month for 2 years. Where that kind of broke down a little is everyone's like, well, you got to have an email list. So I put the podcast, I kept doing it, it's still going, but we introduced the newsletter. And now the flywheel's getting bigger because you're driving. Anytime I write a viral post, a viral tweet, a viral LinkedIn, it drives people to the newsletter. So you get like 100 signups that day. And you're paying with these, I refer you, you refer me, I pay for subs. And so we're up to about 24,000 people reading the newsletter. And every time we promote the podcast. And so they go listen to the podcast, they go find you on socials, and this wheel now is just spinning and spinning because now I can reach out and say, hey, do you want to come join us on the podcast? Like we've got, we're going to promote it to 450,000 people on social, and we're going to share it to our 24,000 newsletter readers. And it just allows people to say, yeah, I want to come talk to you. So that was the reason for that. And then that's the journey that took. And then at some point, you got to look at it and say, all right, Mission 2025. Are we already there? Like, do we just need to take another bet? Do we just need to go in all in on ourselves one more time? Last time it worked. We had a good 10 years. We made the bet. It was scary as shit when we did it, but we had a good 10 years. What if we make the bet again? What are the next 10 years going to be like? And that's what happened over the last 6 to 9 months, was I had that conversation with myself and decided to make the bet again.
Hey, thanks for watching our podcast. If you want to help us get even bigger guests, the best thing you can do is subscribe or follow us on your favorite platforms. Your support helps us attract really busy people to share their secrets to success. Now back to the episode.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. I've done a similar thing this year with your Plan 2028 going to Plan 2025. I set my goals for the year, and then I said, let me be 50% done, 25% of the way into the year. So like by April, halfway done with my goals. And if I do that, then what can I accomplish in the year? And because I think a lot of people forget that you get better at the thing you choose to do.
Yes.
So like if you assume linear 5 push-ups a day, yes, you can hit, 15,000 push-ups in a year. But if you say 5 push-ups a day the first week, 10 push-ups a day next week, then you're at 50,000 push-ups in a year, which is like insane because of just that compounding, which I'm sure you're maybe a little familiar with from 25 years of accounting.
It's my favorite thing in the world is compounding. And people, I always say people, 2 things to think about there. 2 things I'll share with you. People ignore the idea of exponentiality. And so when you are consistent and you do the work day in, day out, what eventually happens is you go exponential. And when you go exponential, it's insane. It's that graph everyone sees where it goes like this and it hockey sticks.
Yeah.
And it goes slow until it goes fast. And so that's why I always suggest, and so you're setting those 1-year goals. I want you to think in decades. Stop thinking in a year, stop thinking in days, start thinking in decades. Because when you start to think in decades over days, it's insane what you accomplish. Yeah. It's insane what you accomplish. And we do it as a company, right? We set 10-year goals and we just break them back down into what do I need to do today to make sure this week, this month, that I hit my quarterly goals, which lead to my annual goals, which if I stack my annual goals, they're going to hit my 10-year goals. And what we've done as a company in the 10 years I've been there, it's insane. The revenue growth, the size of the company, the profitability, the wealth that was created, it's absolutely staggering. It's one of the reasons I want to leave. It's like, well, it's great doing that for people, but fuck, I want to go do that for myself and for my partners. And so that's the next chapter. In BJ, it's taking that mindset of goals and saying, all right, let's create a mission 2030 for this partnership. And it's great we have that, and we'll revisit it annually. But what we're really going to do is we're going to say, what do we need to do this year to achieve that? And then we're going to do it. And when you do that, and I wrote this to myself last week. I was journaling in my journal, and I was writing some goals for myself. By 2040, I want to have 20,000 apartments, and I want to have 40 plus real estate development projects completed. And I started to write, like, there's no goal that's too big. There's almost nothing I can write on this page that I can't do. So why that? How do I make that bigger? Why 20,000? Why not 200,000 doors? Why not 400 development projects? Because all you need is the ability to analyze the deal, the people to execute the deal, and the capital to do the projects. Your job is bringing those 3 things together as an entrepreneur. No matter what the business, can you analyze the deal? Can you execute on the analysis? And do you have the capital to do it? If you have those three things, you can scale. You don't have to stay small, but you have to have the ability to do all three. And then it becomes your job as the entrepreneur, as the owner, to bring those three things together. And those three things, number one, is just experience. And that's why for a lot of young entrepreneurs, for guys like you who are saying, hey, maybe I want to do, like, let's say you say, I want to be a real estate developer. I'm going to say, okay, well, go spend your first 5 years out of university, maybe your first 8. Spend your first 8 at some of the biggest real estate development shops in the city. Just learn everything they do inside and out. By the time you're 30, you have enough basis of understanding that you can start to do deals on your own. So you've got the knowledge, you can analyze deals. Now, maybe when you start, you're the guy executing too. But you don't have the capital, so you got to go get it. And then when you want to do 4 projects, yeah, you can do the analysis, but maybe you hire someone to help. Now you need some people to help you execute, so you got to start hiring. And you've learned a little bit about how to be a leader while you were in that shop, because if you're there for 8 years, you probably grew from a, development analyst to a development manager to a senior development manager to a VP development, and you're managing a little team. So you know how to manage people. Now you got a team under you. They're helping you analyze the deals. And you've got capital partners, and you're starting to build your own capital. That is entrepreneurship for a lot of the people that are listening. Get that specific knowledge that you talked about, Gavin, by working for people who can provide it to you. Like I tell my kids, I want them to be entrepreneurs. I want to have enough wealth that I can set them up in whatever they do. But I do want them to go to university or a trade school for whatever it is they want to do. I do want them to spend time with some of the best shops at what they want to do in the world. Like if you tell me you want to be an industrial designer, let's get you to IDEO, let's get you to Dyson, like let's get you spending 5 years to 8 years with some of the best people in the world. Enough to pick up enough base that you say, hey, I can run my own shop. And then I can be number 3 for you. I can be your capital source. Now you can do number 1 and 2. That's all we need. We need you to get the knowledge that you can do number 1. Let's get a team to help you execute, and I'll provide the capital.
Yeah. I want to talk more about your growth on just all these platforms as well with your podcast. And so where have you found most of your audience to be? Like, is it on LinkedIn? Is it on Twitter? And also, I kind of want to understand where and on what platforms that you're posting these podcasts. What percentage of people are watching on each one, and what are the numbers looking like there?
Oh, that's interesting. I've never dove that deep into the analytics on it, because it's like podcast is one of those things that has pretty shitty analytics, right? If it's anything like the newsletter, which had better analytics when I was on Beehive, ConvertKit. I love ConvertKit. I switched, but its analytics are not as good as Beehive. If there's anything we can work on, it would be that. So what I learned is Twitter sends a lot of people to the newsletter. The best people are from LinkedIn. LinkedIn is by far the best source of traffic. So when you take a newsletter as an example, people that come from Twitter for me, maybe they had a 50% open rate and like a 2% click rate. The people that came from LinkedIn had a 60% open rate with like a 6% click rate. Like they were engaged, because the people that are on LinkedIn are there for professional growth. And so if they're choosing to follow me or my podcast, they're choosing to grow professionally. BJ found me through LinkedIn, not through Twitter. He reached out to me in the LinkedIn DMs. Like, so the people that are on LinkedIn, to me, are the best source of driving your business. That's my number one takeaway. Twitter's great, but it's like, the right way to describe it. It's a little more candy. It's not the meat, right? Like the people there are there for like a little bit of dopamine. They're not there to grow. They're not there. Well, they're not there like LinkedIn. They're not there for business. They're not there to grow their wealth specifically. Some of them are. I want to be careful because you have a great real estate Twitter community. You have a great financial Twitter community. But the average person that's there is there a bit more for fun. And so if you look at like, I wrote a thread on Microsoft Excel that was one of the most viral threads probably the year I wrote it on the platform. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a top 10 post that year. And we picked up 30,000 followers in a weekend. Like it was stupid. Like it was mind-boggling the amount of dopamine that was entering my system. Like I had to put away my phone for a day. I was like, this is freaking me out. Like if I had notifications on, it would have been like beep, 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 beep. Like it was just crazy. I think we ended up with 60 million views of that post or something, right? And like I've met people in other states that read it. They're like, oh, I remember that one. And it's like, oh, okay. But anyway, so a lot of traffic was driven by Twitter, but I would say that traffic was softer. LinkedIn's newer for us. We're growing reasonably well now. So I think LinkedIn drives a fair amount of newsletter traffic, and it's really good reads. It's really good traffic. Instagram's just for us. Like I haven't cracked that. I haven't spent much time on it. We just do it. But Twitter drives the most, I would say. LinkedIn drives the best.
Okay.
So 2 quick questions. One of them is yes or no, so we'll get that one out of the way. Threads. Have you played with it? Is that something that you've messed around with?
I gave up very fast. It was pretty shitty experience. Yeah. It was so like if Twitter was candy, Threads was cotton candy. It was so soft and weak. It was pathetic. Is it still there? Did they shut it down yet?
It is still there.
Oh. No, it's still...
I assumed it got shut down. It was so bad.
It seems like it's all content creators. Like, there's no audience. It's just content creators talking with other content creators, which... Yeah, and
stroking each other's egos and writing fake engagement-bait questions that they then have their VAs answer. And, like, I don't want to go play with that.
And then the other one is more like with... You started this fairly recently, having spent 25 years in accounting. How did you like build authority as this personal growth person when that's like, sure, you've been going personally through accounting and all that stuff, but it's not like you were helping other people or doing all this stuff. And so how do you get that credibility and get people to sort of trust you?
People don't trust, people trust what you've done, right? So, I mean, it's easy for me to write like, I write it all the time, and it's the backdoor brag. It's like CFO, Ironman, ultramarathoner, multi-millionaire. I own $10 million of real estate. Like, and you just keep going down the list, and it's like, okay, like I'm not a certified coach, but guess what? I've done a lot of shit that no other humans have. Like it's that simple, right? Like wife, 2 boys, like. My boy's won, like he's in grade 10. He's already won 5. Like you guys will get this. He's won 5 state championships. Like, so it's not like, yeah, sure, that's his school, but that's me putting him in the school and helping train him as an athlete so that he can make the football team and win 3 state championships. So that like as a starter on the offensive line, you guys know what that's like. He's the left tackle. Like, hey, you're the blind side. Like you got to do your job. Yeah. And so that like you just write about that shit. You're like, well, how do I teach him to be that kid? How do I teach him to be a good student? How do I be a good father? What are the things I do? What are the things I did to become a CFO? What are the things I did to be a multimillionaire? What are the things I did to grow a $10 million real estate portfolio while employed? Because I'm doing all these things while I'm a CFO. Like like how do you balance? Okay, you're a CFO, but you're also running ultra marathons while you're building a real estate development portfolio, while you're reading a book a week, and you're talking to the authors about the books that you're reading, and you're growing on social media. Like, how are you doing all of this? That's how I I just share that.
Thank you for listening to the first half of our conversation with Clint. In the second half, we discuss fatherhood and how to build your brand. Be sure not to miss it by subscribing and following us on your favorite social media. We'll see you Tuesday at noon. Don't be late.